The idea from this fly came from a buddy that had been fishing and ran into some immature damsels that were a really lime bright color, and so this is a great early season damsel pattern, but the fish will also hit it just because it's a nice bright color for the damsels, kind of an added attractor. So I'm going to go ahead and just tie on. This is my 70-aught ultra thread chartreuse, and you want to build up a little bit of a head here because we're going to put our eyes right there. So what I've done with the eyes is I've just taken some 50-pound mono and I just melted the ends, and we'll just tie that on right there. We want to leave a little bit of space in front of the eyes because that's where we're going to tie everything off when we're done, so you don't want to crowd the eye too much with the eye of the hook. Okay, once you've got the eyes secured, the mono eyes, I want to bring the bead up to just before those eyes, and I need to build a little bit of a thread dam so that the bead is going to be able to have a place to be secured against. Plus I'm going to also tie in some material right here in between, so I need a little bit of space. You don't need much, just something like that, and that will give the bead something to hit up against. Okay, now the other thing is you want to make, you can either tie off and start your thread back behind the bead, but I don't like to do that. So what I usually do is I take my finger and I hold the bead like that, and then I bring my thread directly over the top so that the thread is on the top, and then I'll pinch my thumb to hold the thread right on top and then give a couple of wraps, and that thread will stay right on top of the bead right there. That way when we pull our material over at the end of the fly here, you won't even see that thread. Okay, so we work our way down to the bend of the hook, and there we're going to tie in the tail. Okay, for the tail I'm using 3 fibers of Baby Legs Alive. This is from Fly Tier's Dungeon. You can pick up similar stuff at fly shops. This is the smallest size, which is very good for movement on these flies. So I just want about a body's length worth of the tail, and I make it a little longer because I need something to hold on to when I color these in the end. So trim the excess. Okay, now we're going to tie in the last thing that's going to go over, which in this case is going to be our small size chartreuse ultra wire, and I usually leave enough of that so that it makes its way up the body about to where the thorax is going to be tied in. Again, I don't want to have a huge lump of stuff just tied in at the tail, so that's why I like to tie this wire in through the whole length of the body and back down. Nice thing about these little thread minders on my thread is that I can have something to hold it in place and pull it back into my material clip. Okay, so the thing that's going to go after that is some chartreuse hollow tinsel, and I'll usually just clip this off because this is going to come over the top. And this is going to go right on top of where I tied that wire in. You want to make sure that's right on top of the hook. You don't want it to either side, or else it'll skew that, pulling it over when you're done. Okay. Then the first thing that we'll wrap forward is going to be the skin. Now this is UV chewy skin, and it's a caddis green. And what I do is I want to tie this, because it's really stretchy, I'm going to clip the end of this to a point and then lay that point in to tie it in. And that gives you less bulk to be there at your tie-in point. And then work my way forward to just at the hook point. Okay, so you want your thread hanging right down there at the hook point. Now, I'm going to go ahead and grab some hackle pliers. It makes it a little easier to keep tension on this. And starting with the first few wraps, they're going to be really tight, stretched out a lot, because number one, we've got a lot of stuff tied in the back here, and then also you want to create a nice tapered body. So this stuff is really stretchy, so you just stretch it all the way out and create that segmented body. And we're just going to go forward, and then as I go forward I'm going to start to release some of the tension, and that's going to allow the segmentation to be a little bit more pronounced until we get up to the thorax area. And once I'm here at the thorax, I've got the segmented body there. Go ahead and tie this off. And we're done with that. Let's secure that with a few wraps. Okay, the next thing is I'm going to take my hollow tinsel and bring that right over the top of the body. Tie that off. Now I'm not going to clip that off. That's going to actually, I'm going to still use this. So you leave your tinsel there, tie it up like that. And now I'm going to wrap the ribbing with the wire, following the segmentation left by the UV chewy skin. And you don't want to pull on this too tight because this is so, the skin is so flexible that you'll lose your wire down in those wraps. So I want my wire to be a little visible, so just don't pull too hard. Okay, grab my wire cutting scissors. Okay. So now I've got the body built. I'm going to pull my tinsel back, and this is actually going to go the whole length of my fly. So this is also going to serve as part of the shell back here. Got that there. Now as part of that I'm also going to use some thin skin, and I just cut a piece that's about the width of the bead, how wide the bead is, the diameter of the bead. And this is just a tan with speckled black. And we want to tie that in right there at the thorax area to get right on top of my tinsel. And you want to just work your way to, again, the hook point right there. Okay, for the thorax we're going to use some it's a hare's ear Antron mix. It's just a good greenish olive color. And you want to make sure you get a fair amount up there behind the bead, otherwise you're going to have a little hole there to fill and your stuff won't tie in as nicely. Okay, and then in the middle, this is where we're going to tie in some of the legs. Just create a few wraps of thread to give that a place to sit, like so. Okay, we're going to take another strip of this baby legs alive, and I just cut off one strip, and I'm going to use the whole thing here at once so you don't have to create a bunch of legs. And tie it in on the one side. Loop this around like so, and then tie that on the other side. So now we've got our legs, and just to get that a little bit more clean, I'm going to dub a little bit on and go right over the top of the tie-in point from the legs here. Then you can move that last piece back. Alright, once I've got that, I'm going to take my thin skin and tinsel, pull that over the top like so, and I'm going to tie that in right with a couple of tight wraps right behind the bead. Okay, so you got something like that where the stripe is right there in the middle. Now once we got that on there, I'm going to move the thread forward over the bead again. So I'm going to do that same trick where you pull the bead, or you pull the thread in the center of the bead, and then I'm going to pull that over the top of the bead and actually catch the mono eye, and then just run a couple of quick wraps to secure that. So that way my thread is right going over the top of the bead, which is now going to be covered up with our thin skin and tinsel. And I'm going to pull this tight because I want it to conform to the bead shape. Pull that tight, like so. So it's like over that bead. Couple of wraps is all, you don't need a lot. Now I'm going to pull that back again and tie in my last set of legs. Again, using the baby legs alive. And this is a tricky one. You got to tie that right behind the eyes, and secure it with a couple of wraps. Now I'm going to dub this, so you're going to have to adjust your legs here, but that's how they're going to look right now. And then I'm just going to grab some more dubbing and dub around figure 8 and kind of wrap up around in that area to finish off the head. Now we're going to pull over the top for the final tie-in on our hollow tinsel and thin skin. And as you do that, you can reposition those legs. And then tie that off. You want to pull on that, tie it, make sure that tinsel's in the middle. Give it a couple of tight wraps there, and then a couple of wraps right in front, secure it even further, and then get in there tight, clip that off. And then clean up the head with a few wraps. Okay, I'm going to mess with our legs here. So I do have the one leg set of legs that's in a loop, so I just simply cut that like so. Now I'm going to color my legs. So I'm going to use two Sharpies, kind of a chartreuse green and then just a regular old green. And what I'll do is I'll create the chartreuse color by holding all of the legs on each side together like so. And I'm just going to go across them with this marker. And as you run across this, it will actually spin the material so that it will coat most all of the sides. So once I've gotten that, I'm going to take my darker marker and just create little highlights in between. And I still want some white showing, so it creates a nice little segmentation there. Like so. Okay, I'm going to do that with the other side. Now once we've got the tails painted, everything's painted, I'm going to come back in here with my scissors and cut these to length. So the tail is going to be essentially the length of the body there. Chop that. And then I'm going to pull the legs back, and I want them to extend just beyond the body length, just where the tails are tied in. So I'm just going to pull those back about the point I want them, clip them. And then with the ones that are right behind the eye, I'm going to clip them a little bit shorter because there's some shorter legs. Like so. And there's our completed fly.